I think for us, we got to focus on one day at a time. We got to control what we can control, and that's our next opponent, right? That's going to be Seattle coming into our place. Look, this team busts their ass, man. I'm proud of this team, how hard we compete, that we put ourselves in position night in and night out. Minnesota's been the best team in the league for a reason. In these last two games, we've done a pretty good job. We've moved the ball really well. We've gotten some good looks. Some of them we knocked down, some of them we haven't. The growth for us has to continue to be consistently on the defensive end.
Did Stephanie White just cost the Fever this game? Because when your team comes out of halftime and gives away the whole lead in less than 10 minutes, fans have every right to question what's going on in that locker room. The Fever were cruising in the first half, but then Minnesota adjusted, and Indiana had no answer. So the question becomes, was this just bad execution, or was it a coaching meltdown that flipped the game completely? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Nobody watching at halftime thought this game was about to flip on its head. Indiana had momentum, energy, and a comfortable rhythm, and for the first 20 minutes, everything pointed to the Fever being in control. Kelsey Mitchell was lighting it up, drilling shot after shot, and her scoring looked effortless. She put pressure on the Lynx every time she touched the ball, and Minnesota just didn't have an early answer for her quickness and confidence. On the other side, Lexie Hull was the one keeping Minnesota from digging too deep a hole. She stepped in with big threes, showing the kind of timing that punishes defenses if left open. That opening stretch made it feel like Indiana had solved the game already, going into the break with the upper hand. Then the third quarter started, and the entire tone of the matchup shifted in an instant. The Fever looked flat, slow, and honestly confused, while Minnesota came out with fire. It felt like they flipped a switch at halftime, as if they studied everything going wrong in the first half and decided to clamp down immediately. Instead of open looks on the perimeter, Indiana suddenly found defenders in their faces. Passes that sailed smoothly in the first half turned sloppy, with the Lynx anticipating every move. What had been a free-flowing offense suddenly became a grind, and Indiana's once comfortable advantage started disappearing.
We're a team that's still reintegrating new pieces, and we got to find a way to make it click. But I think for us, we got to focus on one day at a time. We got to control what we can control, and that's our next opponent, right? That's going to be Seattle coming into our place. For me, I think defensively, just our attention to detail has to be there because they make you work. They get to fourth sides of the floor, fourth actions, getting opportunities, especially when you're on the floor, and the way that Kelsey and AB.
That's the moment where Minnesota's approach on defense completely smothered the Fever. Guards forced players off their spots, switching aggressively, cutting off driving lanes. Shooters who had spacing earlier now had to force tough attempts with the shot clock winding down. Every possession felt harder, and that frustration showed on missed jumpers and broken plays. It wasn't just about individual effort. The Lynx adjusted schemes to close gaps faster, and that collective effort was overwhelming. Meanwhile, the Fever's ball movement got stuck, with Mitchell carrying a heavy load just to keep them afloat. And speaking of Mitchell, she still had a monster scoring output, finishing with 27. But here's the thing, when your defense collapses, even a performance like that starts to lose impact. She kept pushing, hitting buckets when Indiana desperately needed life, but the gaps on the other end nullified her contribution. The Lynx pulled off stops, turned them into momentum, and then punished the Fever with efficient looks. It's a basketball truth. If your defense can't buy you time to reset, even a hot score can't keep a team ahead for long.
They got away from us a little bit as well, and it's just being locked in for 40 minutes. Work together, it opens things up, and she's been shot ready, and she's knocked down some big ones for us. Yeah, to me, it's the end of the second and the beginning of the third. It's those runs right there. I think just attention to detail in those moments. We had a high turnover rate. I think in both games they turned up their pressure, which is a big one. It's a big one. So you can't get caught looking at that stuff. We got to stay locked in on what we have to do and be where our feet are and take care of what's in front of us.
Now look at Lexie Hull again. She had already been heating up in the first half, but during this run she turned into the pressure point Indiana couldn't handle. Every time the Fever tried to answer back, Hull was there, spacing the floor and knocking down threes that looked automatic. That role goes beyond points on the board. It's about energy. Those shots drained confidence from Indiana players and even silenced parts of their own momentum. Watching her stay in rhythm while Indiana scrambled showed how much a shooting groove can change the emotional direction of a game. And let's not leave out Aaliyah Boston. She actually put up efficient numbers on the offensive side, making her touches count and showing control around the basket. Scoring-wise, she did her job, no question about it. But that efficiency didn't carry over to her defensive presence. Minnesota went at the Fever hard in the paint, testing her rim protection, and runs kept developing when she couldn't shut off those drives.
Look, this team busts their ass, man. I'm proud of this team, how hard we compete, that we put ourselves in position night in and night out. Minnesota's been the best team in the league for a reason. They're patient, the ball's moving, it's pinging, they read. So attention to detail in forcing the shots that we want them to shoot. How they do make you work, till the end of the shot clock oftentimes. So I think we can take something that way. I feel like offensively,
It created a weird picture. Indiana was not powerless on offense. They had multiple players carrying their share. Yet defensively, every scheme felt a step slow, and White didn't seem to provide an answer. That's what makes this collapse sting more. It wasn't one of those nights where shots just wouldn't drop. It was a coaching issue. The Lynx looked like they came in with a whole new plan after halftime. White, meanwhile, stuck with what had worked early, even though Minnesota had clearly figured it out. The result? A momentum swing that played out like a chess match. Minnesota moved pieces, created mismatches, and hit Indiana from different angles. White never countered, staying stuck on a board where she had no moves left. So now the big question hangs in the air. Did we just watch one of the clearest examples of a coach freezing in real time? Or was this truly just Indiana failing to execute under pressure?
yeah, I think it's big. She's a pro, she's been around, she's experienced, she stayed ready. I think we can also learn from it offensively in how the ball continues to move, how it doesn't get stuck. In these last two games, we've done a pretty good job. We've moved the ball really well, we've gotten some good looks. Some of them we knocked down, some of them we haven't. The growth for us has to continue to be consistently on the defensive end.
Halftime decisions decide games, and this was proof. Minnesota came out sharp while Indiana stayed stuck. That failure didn't just cost them momentum, it cost them the result and their spot in the standings. The Lynx looked like the team making moves while the Fever looked frozen in place. And here's the thing, if Caitlin Clark was playing, or if White had made smarter adjustments, there's a real chance this game ends differently. The Fever don't have room for mistakes now. So what do you think? Did Stephanie White choke away this game, or was it just her players not executing?